just give me a sec while I do this. Oh, wow. Hi, everyone. This thing is, my device is not working as quick as I'm speaking. But hey, you know how we roll. You know how we start. We have our theme song. We can't start without it. And let's do this thing so we can start our conversation. Yes. I'm having a lot of system glitches today, but we're going to get it right. Here we go. Yay!
Rain, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky and the Brain.
everybody. We are in the house. I just want to say hi to everyone who is on Facebook. Big up yourself. Thanks, Evangelist Knox, and I'm seeing Pharaoh. Those are the early birds on Facebook. We're going to reach a point where we stop saying try to take over the world and just say we are step out. We are step out and I do bare things. So we've been in the beginning when Let's Talk started. It wasn't Let's Talk Kingdom. It was just Let's Talk. I wanted to know what to name this platform, and I just said Let's Talk. And I believe it was the first week. I believe my presenter was on for the very first program. Yes. And so she spoke a little bit on the economy, where we were at. Let's Talk is a very holistic, program. We started out because we felt that as kingdom ambassadors, we needed not to just understand what was happening within our four walls, but also what was happening outside. We have transitioned, our language have changed. We now realize that an ecclesia is now gathered. I have more than 13 people. So the ecclesia is now here. And we have persons on Facebook. So we have an outright church. And we wanted to have an understanding of how we could benefit from COVID. We wanted to know how to pray. Now, listen, I'm at home, I'm at home studios. You may hear the wonderful ice cream truck passing in the background because it's the home studios, right? We'll soon get the other studio. Right. So I just want to say, Jody came on and really graced us and educated us. Now that we are coming to the end of the year, OMG, within 2 days, we're in December. Big up God, big up everybody that comes on this platform, because we never saw this far. This wasn't in close view to know that we would actually reach December with the Let's Talk. But Jody came on and Jody kind of gave us an idea, and I want to go back there because a lot has happened in the life of the Let's Talk family, in the lives of the viewership on Facebook. A lot has happened. And I just want to kind of go back there to see, okay, now Jody, where are we at? We're on the mountain of economy. There is such a mountain. Where are we at? Where do you see us going? You are a wonderful kingdom ambassador. Jody is my co-worker, my friend. She's one of the most, you know those calm people that annoys you, like nothing don't bother them. They know how to maintain composure. And you see my personality. Like Jody keeps calm no matter what. There's so much I learned from her. She is chill 24/7. If you see her get mad, it's serious. Like when you see Jody get mad, start get nervous because something happened. But I just want to say this wonderful gem, this wonderful Kingdom ambassador, she's an economist as well as a portfolio analyst. I depend on her brilliant mind to do what I need to do. And so I just want you, Let's Talk family, to make her feel welcome once again. She was on our very first program. Jody, you believe this? Like,
thought it would just be weeks. It turned out into months.
Exactly. Yeah. You reach certain point and you say, all right, we know nothing else for talk about. We think this is it. So Jody, welcome once again. You're no stranger to the Let's Talk family. You're not just here as a presenter. You've been with us some of the weeks, some of the journey. And I just want to say thank you. Yeah, let's start. Jody,
All
Where
right.
is our economy? Well, go on, talk to it.
All right, no problem. So I want to say hi to everybody and thanks to Natalie and Mr. Brown for having me on the platform. I also want to just say thanks for what it is that you're doing. I mean, it's not only been interesting, it has been impactful. I have learned and there are things that I gain clarity on, as well as it has, impacted change in how it is that I operate. And so we're hoping to get better at it. And we're really grateful. Well, I'm very grateful for the platform that you have here. All right. So as it relates to economy, when we spoke in March, April, we'd have been looking to say what we think is going to happen. And since then, we have numbers as to what actually happened during the past 6 months between May and September, between April and September. And it's been quite a lot. We thought that things would slow down, and they did. There was the closing of the ports, and so persons weren't coming in. So tourism took a big hit. There was also, quarantining people in Portmore where they're locked away for a period of time, and as such, all of that would have impacted. And they said that GDP, and we're going to try to not use the fancy terms. We're going to try and just relate them to everyday life.
Thank you.
So they said that GDP was down. The official figures was 18% for April to June. And when you think of GDP, you want to think of everyday things that you and I do. We contribute to GDP. So we're not isolated from the economy, we're a part of it. So when it is that you turn on your lights in your home, you wake up and you turn on your lights, you brush your teeth, that is NWC making money, that is JPS making money, that is economic activity. When it is that you buy gasoline to drive or take the bus, that's economic activity. And if it is that you're doing less of those things, then economic activity decline and GDP will have a decline. In essence, that's it in our way. And so they said that we have an 18.4% decline for April to June, which is massive. I mean, even though we weren't growing by big numbers before we had growth, we were still, little by little ticking up. And to have job was a huge impact, and a lot of persons would have lost jobs. And if it is that you didn't lose your job, you probably lost hours. And if it is that you weren't earning less, you probably were in fear that I could be next to lose my job. And that would have meant that you kind of went into reserve. So if you think about persons who probably had birthdays between March, the second half of March into summer, and you think of persons probably, I know for some females on their birthday, they normally come to work well hot. And that could have mean I spend like 30 grand between hair, nails, lashes, makeup, and all of that. And they wouldn't have done that. So that's 30 grand that would have normally go out there and spend on things, never get spent. That means it either remain in your pocket or you just never have the money to do it. And so everybody felt a little bit of the impact. So the hairdresser who would have gotten some of the funds and would have been able to go to the supermarket, she probably would have spent less at the supermarket. The lashes, the makeup artists, all of those persons felt the real hit of it. And if it is that you never have something in reserve, you were really stretched for what it is that you were able to do. And that was a big part of what happened in that period of time. And we had to adjust, we had to make shifts, and you had to learn how to do things in new ways. And then there was now, you move into the July to September where it wasn't as bad. So we started to open up and we said, let us let tourists back in. But it's still a big dip. So if you look at last year, July, there are about 250,000 tourists who came to Jamaica in July last year. And this year, that was probably about 50,000. So that's a huge drop. And if it is that you're moving from 250 to 50, I really don't need all this manpower that I had before. And so I'm going to need to let go some of these people. And if it is that 250 people used to come, then what it is that they're consuming is less this year versus last year. So I don't need to import as much. I don't need to ask the farmers for as much that I did last year. So if it is that, when my hotel was in full capacity, fully booked, I would get from 4 farmers. Probably I only take from 1 farmer half of what I took last year. And so it meant that you had extra food now because the farmers would have started to plant before COVID started in anticipation that they're going to spend this or they're going to sell this to the hotels. And the hotels say, I don't want it. So then they end up with all of that now, and it left for us on the local markets, or if it is that they could have exported it. So it was huge in terms of the shifts and the changes that happened for us, but it got a little bit better. in the July to September quarter. So we still declined, but we never declined as much as we did in the previous quarter. So I think we declined by about 11%. So going forward now for October to December, we're still anticipating that we're going to have some decline because it's still not at the level that we were last year. We're still even though we're opening up, we're still reserved because there's still a lot of uncertainty with COVID. You're still not sure what is going to happen. A lot of persons not sure if they're going to get bonus, and if you get bonus, it's probably less than what you got last year. And so you're kind of reserved. So if it is that you normally buy presents for 50 people in your family, you probably have to say, well, only immediate family.
Skip Christmas.
I don't think Jamaicans plan to skip Christmas. I think it's just going to be a scaled down version of Christmas. So if some people used to bake enough cake, they probably can't bake enough cake this year. And so you're pulling back, not just because you have less, but also because you're not sure how much you will have in the future. There's still uncertainty and there's still a risk to whatever it is that may happen next year. I mean, you go to your places of employment and you see slow down for most people. They say things are slowing down. You notice if you're working at a restaurant, probably it's less people coming in. If you're working at a bank, you notice probably less people taking out loans or persons taking out mortgages or coming in for credit cards. You notice things are slowing down. And so you're still on edge. You're still a little bit not sure what to expect. And so you're still holding back a little bit. So there's still uncertainty that's happening within the marketplace.
Jody, I just want to ask that with all of this pulling back, and again, I strongly believe that we didn't know that the tourism sector would have impacted us the way it did. And so I am just happy, that we're going over this right now. I'm happy that we're having discussion once again about the economy, because I really think that that we as a holistic body needs to know how to go forward. As you rightfully say, some of us used to bake a dozen cake, and then when the family gathered, the decision is cut it down, please cut it down. I have a family in the Let's Talk studio, and I just want her to come and say hi. This is when family come in, you have to say hi to the Let's Talk family when you head down. Yes,
hi guys.
We have people in the studios.
Hi, Chris.
So, and she come for a cake. I just want to let you know, Shelly, yes, Nikki is here. Renee, yes, Nikki is here. Do not unmute your mic, Shelly and Renee. Do not unmute. Type it privately.
We don't know already. Anyway.
So thank you so much, Nikki, for coming. I really appreciate it, passing through. So Jody, my question is, what should we do? What should we expect? How should we live? What's the wisest route to take right now with our limited resources?
All right, so I think what you want, I'm going to say this, and it's not to scare anybody, that we're going to have permanent shifts post-COVID. So there are things that's happening now that we're going to continue to do into probably a longer time than we thought we would. And shifts are normal. I can recall when I was going to primary school, I did common entrance. And at that point, you had, a few books and everybody walked with a backpack on the back. Then GSAT came in, and for every subject, you had 2 books. And children now started to carry the backpack via wheels. And so the market shifted in that instance. When my mother was going to school, it was slate and chalkboard, and the market shifted. So things will always shift. And so we're not new to experiencing shifts. So when I said that there are going to be permanent shifts, it's going to be positive impact for some and negative for some. But as people, as businesses, we have always learned to adapt and to realign ourselves with the shifts that's happening in market. So it's nothing new. They're going to have shifts. If you think about it, that a lot of things, I think one survey that was done said that a lot of businesses or transactions that went online are going to remain online even post-COVID. So if it is that you started to send in your order for supermarket, chances are even after when everybody is now free to return to supermarket maskless or whatever, you may still do that online, and those sort of services will stay. And while it may mean less jobs for some people, it would very well mean more jobs for others, because when you move online, you have opportunities like cybersecurity that becomes much more needed than it was before. So if it is that you think about you're working on a Zoom platform, every company now probably have Teams or whatever, and there's so much more information that's disclosed in an online space. All of these companies now decided that, hey, we're going to have to beef up security from the cyber end. So if it is that they used to probably have one person who do cybersecurity, they probably now have a team. And so with market shifts, you get new opportunities, and it creates employment in some areas, whereas you lose in other areas. So it's just a matter of how it is that we are going to adapt and how we're going to
Jody,
move
you
forward.
said something big. You said two things big, and I don't want to lose the point. First, you said that the shift system, we may go into a shift system, and that we will what we have been calling the norm, which is the norm 9 to 5, we're now going to really, I know that the government before has been speaking a lot about flexi shift or flexi time. I know HR is on, so HR can correct my terminology, but I know some flexi time was being discussed. So that's one thing. And the reason why I want to discuss that, because a lot of people think that we're once things return to normal, things are gonna go back.
No.
Are you foreseeing us going back to what things were? What's that? Pre-COVID?
Yeah, I mean, not everything will return to how it was. Some companies have already not renewed leases for office space, and some probably won't in 2021, because they would have been making, in some ways, savings that are, instead of leasing out, if people can work from home and are not having to lease a space and pay rent and water and light, and probably just convert to a smaller space, then as a business, I'm going to continue to do that, especially when it is that consumer demand may not pick up as quick as I thought. So if it is, because I mean, even though, as I said, some persons are still, even though you have a job, you may not be sure if you're still going to have a job 2021. And as such, some things you may not buy as much as you used to before. And so there's still going to be reduced demand as we go into 2021, 2022. And businesses are going to have to change and adjust in that new framework. And so people are going to continue to work from home, whether it is that you work from home less, you probably, I mean, this concept where I have a desk at work and, I put up my children and my husband or my wife, a positive while you're at work. And it may not necessarily be your workspace is not going to be Jody desk anymore, just going to be a desk that the company owns and Jody uses. And it's not going to be as personalized, and we're going to have to adjust to all of that sort of shift. I mean, there's good that comes with it. If you think about food companies that are probably closer to residential communities, they may not have been used to a heavy lunch traffic, because for the most part, everybody leave the residential and went into the city and buy food at lunchtime. Where it is that you have people now working from home, you may now have more persons going to those restaurants that are closer to residential communities and buying lunch. Because if I live in Portmore and I used to buy lunch in New Kingston, if I'm working from home, I mean, it don't matter how much I love a particular Chinese food, I'm not driving so New Kingston every day to buy food at that same place. I'm now going to shift. And so you could see build out for other urban towns and other, town centers could then get more activity with just people working from home. And, you're muted, I'm not hearing you.
Thank you, Jody. Before you continue, oh God, I'm not gonna pronounce your first name. So Collins, he asked, I'm gonna say he, I may be wrong, but a question was asked, it's she. Thank you so much. I appreciate. So she asked a question in the chat. She said, wouldn't church online too, Jodian? I think so. So can you speak to how this shift will affect the change? But before you speak to it, Miss Collins, I'm gonna ask you to unmute. Her hand was up.
Good afternoon.
Good
Hi, Miss.
afternoon.
Hi, Jody. This is Sevlin. Yes, I saw this on Jody's status and I just think I would just, listen
Thanks
in.
for the support, Sevlin. Thank you.
And so while listening, she was talking about the shift. I think there'll be a major shift in how worship is done. And, I have my own thoughts on that, but would like to hear Jody speak on how
Sevlin, you can share your thoughts on Let's Talk. We
Yes,
are
I'm
very
just thinking that.
controversial on this platform. So you can share your thoughts, Sevlin. Share.
No, just to say that, like now, a number of people use the opportunity not to come out to church, even though some churches have reopened. And so I'm thinking that going forward, post COVID, we still have to maintain this media ministry, expand it because people are going to rather stay at home and tune in from home. So I think the media ministry is going to be expanded for some churches, especially those who were not fully engaged in that type of ministry, because now you find that, especially the young people, they stay out even though church reopens. So this, I think, will be another major shift or pivot, they call it now,
Yes.
for the church.
Pivot. Yes, it's called pivot sometimes. And I agree with you, Sevlin. I'm going to let Jody answer, but I agree with you. I think what we need to become is strategists. I believe, as it says, it's the media ministry that's going to need to grow. Investment is going to be needed to be made in the media ministry. No, I think even for the shut-ins, you have persons who have been finding it very difficult to come out of their homes. And this is where we have to become strategic in what we do and how we put forward the gospel, put forward what we're teaching, what we're delivering. Jody, I'm going to hand over to you. Let me hear your thoughts. Hold on, someone else. Pasadena on Facebook says things will never go back to the normal. Doreen White says, oh, we now call in the restaurant and get lunch delivered to us at home. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Thanks, Evelyn, for joining in. I definitely agree that it's going to change the way in which it is that we fellowship. And I have a coworker who at the initial onset, every time I said social distance, she always said, no, it's a physical distancing. I don't like it. We're social beings. And so we will need, even as it is that we're for most of 2020 having stayed in and we're adjusting to being more inside, we're still very much social beings. And as such, there is going to be new ways in which we interact with persons and still maintain, connections with humans, because we still need human connection as much as it is that we have the convenience of online. And so churches will have to then in some way or form adapt and change how it is that they go forward. Is it that you're going to do more interactive in terms of how it is that you stream your services? I mean, I think we're at a point where it is, if I'm at home, I can just watch. And, if I have some pre-recorded, it can be presented. But we still need human touch and human contact. And if it is that we're going to go forward, then it's probably going to be a situation where, I can give my testimony live and stream from home as we go forward. But definitely persons are going to form new norms in certain ways and change patterns and want to do more online. And as one person mentioned, the calling in for food, if it is that once I start and I develop a habit that I can call and get my food, then chances are I'll stay that way. When I consider, if I work from home, I probably wake up, just shower, and I'm still in pajamas or whatever. I mean, to go on the road, it probably mean comb here and all of that sort of, open my gate, and that laziness will probably want to set in, and I still continue to call even when things are free, because I've kind of formed a habit and I've become accustomed to a certain level of convenience of everything happening within my own space. And so I will see definitely experience a bit more of that in a post-COVID world. So there are changes that will come, and we're just going to change. We are going to move along with the changes as they come, and not to necessarily see it as, all bad, but just the fact that this is how the world is. Whether there was COVID, changes would come. I think when you look at the US market, they have much more, and bigger economies have more food delivery services than we do. And, COVID just pushed us closer to where it is that everybody else was in terms of food delivery. So it's not necessarily new to us in that regard.
You also said something, Jody, that some jobs will not bounce back, while others will be created and expanded on. This is why I want to have Let's Talk, because I just want the Let's Talk family, persons who are, whether you are on Facebook or you are on Zoom, put in the chat which jobs you believe will not, we will lose, and the jobs that you believe after COVID, we will be seeing more of. Why I'm asking this is because we have to understand how to guide people, because things are going to change. The jobs that we were taught, say when we just started, when you're growing up, Jody, you heard doctor, lawyer, Indian chief were the 4 money-making jobs. And sometimes some people say thief, but we now say thief on the platform here. And now both you and I have come to learn that that's not true, that there are other fields that you can generate income from to help at the end of the day to grow you, family, kingdom. And I just want you to speak a little bit to that. Let's talk, put it in the chat. How is it that you're going, how do you believe then, or what jobs then do you see kind of being done away with? And I know you spoke a little bit about IT sector, especially the security arm of it. Can you elaborate any more?
I think in terms of probably a lot of your face-to-face, in terms of your customer service, if it is that we're going more online, then companies will then eventually even not even have customer service reps, but go a little bit more with chatbots. And so you're talking really to somebody automated who is, based on frequently asked questions that kind of giving a generic responses. And then if that doesn't solve your problem, then you probably talk to a human. And so I think if it is that we're going online, then that creates greater avenues for companies to use those sorts of services that would lead or would lend the way to reducing, that face-to-face or that initial person. So if it is when you think of companies that have probably a WhatsApp for you to call in and ask prices or whatever, your initial conversation that you have, hi, hello, welcome, whatever you want, may not actually be with a person as it was before, because you're moving to online. And so that opens up the possibility. And so I think that could be some of the jobs that you may not have going forward in a post-COVID as you move further into online living. As it relates to school, I think that's a big one as to what will school look like. Quite a few, most persons would have been at home. Is it that we're going to move to a place where you probably have, instead of one teacher to 50 students, you have one teacher now on a platform to 250. And so you may need less teachers. And so it's how it is that, everything will shape as we move forward. But not to be daunted that people may lose jobs, people also gain jobs. And so there are other areas that will pop up and open, and we all have, as humans, an entrepreneurial nature to us. And so we'll find things. If you think about it, when you're growing up and you take the bus, you leave up Monday morning, sun shining, and you walk through halfway through or whatever, there was nobody there selling umbrella. And by the time school finished and you're going home and it pouring, you see 6, 7 people now start selling umbrellas. I mean, when the need for something come on, people become resilient and they find, and in a way, demand will create its own supply. So don't be too phased or daunted by the fact that persons are going to lose, but just that things will pop up. And if you consider even growing up in our world where we were not in, computer wasn't there when I was born, it's something that come up later. We all learned and we all adjusted, and people who had skills for typewriting had to adjust and they made the shift and we move along.
Jody, so before you continue, I just want to share some comments that I'm getting in the chat. So I'm seeing bank personnel's, yes, Yvonne McDonald, you're a newbie. Hi, newbie. So I see where she placed that, as well as Aris. Persons are saying that, I think, oh yeah, Scotia closed a couple of their branches to become automated. Even though we knew that was a strategy from before, but there are mergers that are happening based on what Yvonne's saying. We're losing tellers. Some bank branches are closing or merging. Restaurant workers. So we just need the chefs and maybe one person to package because we have the riders. So we
servers.
Yeah, because I think I ordered on 7 Crave.
I didn't understand that.
I ordered on 7 Crave one day, and funnily enough, it was a taxi lady who carried the food, and I was like, whoa. So persons, as you rightfully said, they see where the market is and they are becoming, we're Jamaicans, we are Jamaicans. But I just want for everyone to start to understand, we need to sometimes start to think out the box. I have some more from my other economist that is online. Janelle, big up yourself. But I have on Facebook where Pasadena says one new normal could be called church bubble, where believers familiar with each other in the same area meet regularly. What do you think? Okay, so we will have many groups of one church.
I think as we go along, we're going to have to fashion to the new ways of doing things. So I mean, if it is that
someone says,
go ahead.
Oh, I just put in one more. On Facebook, Mel says more entrepreneurs, which is what you said. Yes, Christopher says a cell group concept. I'm trying to list them out. Janelle says that some of the industries, especially tourism, it's not that it's going to become obsolete, but it's that it's gonna take a while. It will take longer for these jobs to recover. Domestic workers. Yeah, because if you're there home and you don't have the resources, you don't need a domestic helper. You are going to become that. And so thanks, Jan. Thanks, Ari. Thanks, Yvonne. Even with online platform, more teachers will be needed. Okay. All right, Melissa is a teacher. So that's true because I'm getting annoyed of the one teacher teaching everything. And I think they are getting tired too of doing everything. I'm trying to read as much, Jody. Yeah, that's it. Guys, think about it, think some more. So what I'm hearing out of this is some industries may not go obsolete. Entertainment industry, they got a huge blow. So it's not that some industries will go obsolete. It's just that they're going to need to recover and they're going to have to come back new because of the changes. So those some industry going to have to literally revamp. We're going to have a lot of sellers because that's what entrepreneurship is about. Will we have a lot of buyers, Jody?
I think in some areas, I mean, if you think about it, if it is that I'm working from home and children are now working or doing school from home. I mean, a typical dressmaker or clothing stores may not get the same amount of boost because, I mean, if I only going to work twice per week, I mean, I can rotate less clothes as opposed to if I go in for 5 days. And so my demand for certain things are going to decline within a space where I'm doing more online. And similarly for children, if it is, you know, sometime I guess for boys for khaki, you probably have to change it because it gets short. But nobody not sit down there, so you can still just have on shorts if you need to buy new khaki pants come September. And so for some areas, you're definitely going to see decline, but for other areas, you'll see an uptick. So people in electronics would have made a killing because I mean, everybody, you know, if you never have a laptop for your child, you probably just had one or you had, you know, your own and your child was using it. If it is that you could afford it, you went out and you bought a tablet, you bought a laptop. And so those persons would have seen increased sales. And going forward, if it is that a child is now at home using a laptop every day and they're doing it more frequently than they were before, your possibility for crashes and it not working and replacing becomes greater. So your demand in some areas will pick up. I definitely agree with Janelle that in some areas you're going to see it not going to come back as quick as it was before. And they have a concept that they call pre-COVID or pre-crisis levels. So if it is in 2019 as a cabinet maker, I was making 100 products for the year. And then COVID hit, nobody not buying anything. I make 45 in 2020. And then next year, you know, people feel a little bit better. I make probably 60. So comparing 2021 to 2020, I grow, but I'm still not back at the 100 where I was before. So it's going to take a while before we go back to levels or demand and putting an output at the levels that we were in 2020 or before COVID hit. So it's going to take a while before we go back to those pre-COVID levels. But, you know, as we continue, we're going to take a little time and we're going to work through. And the key is to always be open and looking for how it is that I'm going to make the shift and make the change. So keeping yourself abreast of what's happening, keeping yourself nimble, keeping yourself, you know, educated on new things and opening up yourself to the new ways of doing things is one of the key things. I mean, we have all heard of having a second job or having a second floor income. And for some persons that would have changed and they have to know, realign. If you think of some teachers, when school was in session, they probably used to sell sweets or toys after school. And that was a secondary income that probably used to, you know, pay part of a loan or do something. And then that went. So they have to know refashion. How is it then? If children are at home and I can't sell these things, what am I going to sell? How am I going to make up for that space? And so they may then open a shop at the house because you live in our communities, children are still there. And so it's how you refashion, how it is that you make changes. And there are some companies that have already started to do that. So before COVID, there are a lot of Jamaican companies that were into the manufacturing of chemical products, but they weren't making sanitizers. And you go in your pharmacy, you go to your supermarkets, and you start to see local sanitizers available, whether it is liquid, gel, whatever form. And so they have refashioned the structure that they have to now meet demand because persons are now demanding this. So I think Caribbean Flavors and Fragrance is one such company. So I mean, they're typically made for the manufacturing in terms of food, but they did a little bit in chemicals. But you know, as with people not necessarily celebrating birthdays, that demand now for cake and baking ingredients dip. But the same machine we have can use to do something that there's a market for. And so I switch up my thing and I move and I start to produce along that lines. And so I'm still able to earn in COVID because I've switched. And so innovation is going to be key. The way in which we think and how it is that we solve problems going forward going to be something that we have to continuously look at.
Thanks, Joe. Sevlin, I see your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question or make your comment. Guys, if you want to speak, just raise your hand and I will acknowledge you.
Yes,
go ahead, Sevlin.
Yes, I just want to make a comment. And I know that Janelle would, as an economist, would feel good about this. I'm just coming in from the North Coast and I have no doubt that the tourist industry will pick up. I went to one this weekend and I was really frightened to see the number of persons that were there, practicing the protocols and this. But I remember when this thing struck, there were a lot of talk about too much dependence on the tourism industry. And I would want to ask Jody, because we speak of these industries coming up, but we're going to have a number of informal industries, not measurable, which won't impact GDP as much. So I'm going to ask Jody what she thinks about what government could do to get these companies on board, to get them measurable, or of any industry that would be big enough, measurable to impact GDP.
All right, so Sevlin seems like she's another savvy one. So like my husband, who's an engineer now, Chris, you understood what Sevlin just said?
She was breaking up. I think
so
she was saying something about some informal.
So let me just break it down for Let's Talk to understand. So Jody spoke about some upcoming industry. Now, not because it's an upcoming industry means that it can help towards our GDP. So she was saying, you know, what is it that the government would need to do, even though Jody don't work with government, but what is it that we can do to cause these, or what would the triggers be for these entities to become a measurable entity, or a sector become measurable where it is actually impacting GDP. And she was also saying that she went to a hotel the other day, and the amount of people when she sit down in the hotel, tourism look like it's kind of coming up. And she spoke about our dependency on the tourism sector, which, as I tell you, Chris, as I tell you, Let's Talk family, I don't think nobody did foresee how seriously impacted, whether, as Janelle taught us, the direct and the indirect, of how much we would have been impacted by this sector. Jody, handing over to you. Janelle, you can open your mic at any time if you want to speak, even though I don't really want to talk too much.
All right, so we start with the tourism one. That's what you mentioned first. I mean, I'm really happy to hear that there's people are going out and using the service, so that's good. I mean, it's good for employment and just the building back. One of the things that you want to think about with the economy is that things are not isolated, and tourism is not just tourism by itself and they just out of nowhere make their own food and whatever. They connect to the rest of the economy. And so the government really did quite a bit of work to improve what they call linkages between the different sectors. So they wanted to say, if it is that we have tourists coming and they need food, let us see if our local markets, our local farmers can supply the food as opposed to them importing everything that they need. And if you think about the space, there is requirement for food, there's requirement for labor, there's requirement for furniture that's there, and they try to link as much as possible with the local to say, let us take as much local products as we can. And as such, when it is that people stopped, when visitor arrivals dipped and persons weren't using the hotels, they were demanding less, and so it impacted the rest of the economy. And it's really because of how it is that we have linked together. And I mean, linkages are good because it meant that tourism was taking more from the rest of the economy outside of tourism to do what it needed to do. And it's just because they're impacted, the impact, because you have that linkages now spread a little bit wider. As it relates to how it is that government can now measure things, part of what will happen is that the statistical institutes will have to refashion. And so from time to time, they generally redo and look over how it is that they measure things, because the economy and the measurements is really based on persons' consumption patterns and how it is that we within the space are operating and what we're doing. And so you want to then, measure what it is that persons are doing. So if you think about probably 15, 20 years ago, when you looked at graduation pictures, it was just people, for the most part, a little bit of powder and, probably a little lip gloss and their hair. And now when you look at graduation pictures, it's a big production. It's a lot of, not your own hair. It's a lot of makeup artistry work. And so the Statistical Institute have to change.
Everybody have good hair like you. Don't do it. Don't do it.
So the Statistical Institute have to change and to look at, the consumption now of how it is. They probably weren't measuring, weaves and all of that. And so it's something that they have to look at now. And a similar thing will happen as it is that things change. So before we used to have, tobacco production here, that has stopped. And so they have to look at what it is that we're producing now and how it is that we capture that. So it won't instantly that the government will then now start to get a feel of the new era. So there still will be for probably another 2 years tracking what it is that we were doing before COVID. And it's going to take a little while before they really look at all the consumption patterns and how things are changing to see what it is that we need to start tracking a little bit better. I know that from companies' office standpoint that there is some work that is done there, and there's generally a push with jump for people to probably start registering business and supporting persons to become formal. So I think that push will continue, but it's going to take a little bit of time before we get to having these new sectors being easily and readily measured. It's going to take a little time, but it will happen because the tracking of the economy has to be based on the consumption patterns of people and how it is that we're operating.
You said something before, Jodian, and I just want to go back to it. So for those sectors that increased, and I wouldn't call it an organic increase. What is organic, guys? Let me stop using these words on the platform. I wouldn't call it an increase that naturally happens. It happened because of the pandemic. So technology, everybody need an iPad, everybody need a laptop. So the sales within all of these computer places, down to the man who fix the iPad or the phone, will they continue to see these increase in sales, or it was just like a one-off thing?
Well, I think because a little bit more online presence, and the trend or the studies show that once it is that you move online, you're likely to stay in that space. So for example, if you think about when it is that COVID happened or we started and we were sent home, you probably were just working with your dining table and your regular chair there. And by 4 or 5 months in, you realize you probably start to have neck pains or you feel uncomfortable not working. And so you eventually have to move to the fact that, all right, probably I need to set up a little office desk and chair. If not a full-on office space so that door can close, I probably went out and I bought things. And if it is that we're moving to working from home in the future, that same chair going, over time, fall apart, start strip or whatever, and so continually need to replace. So the big bump that you have now, because everybody is doing it now, will not necessarily be replicated next year or other years, but they'll continue to get need or driven by the fact that people need to replace and probably new entrants or new ways to do things. So there will still be some demand for those products. I mean, and the thing with tech is that it doesn't stay as is. A lot of persons realize now that the laptop camera was not so great for a lot of Zoom platform meetings and stuff, and people are now buying individual webcams, and you have a laptop for a period of time, you normally need to change out, and tech is dynamic. And one of the things is that Apple and Samsung, they're coming with more and more products, and after a while what you have becomes obsolete, and so that will continue to drive sales. And that is within tech because just the nature of tech. But in other areas, people will continually need to replace, and some persons who were slow to build out will eventually have to build out office space, because as I said, you're going to start to feel some of the effects because your space was not definitely prepared or defined for working at home.
So Jody, I'm just kind of thinking, and Christmas is upon us. I'm a Christmas person, yes I am. And we're going into the new year. We're not sure how COVID going to pan out, or Prime Minister has changed the curfew time to that 1 extra hour, which a lot of people said don't matter. And we have seen historically that each time there is some form of holiday, the COVID numbers, they just go up and spike. If this happens, okay, I'm gonna ask Pastor Dean a question after this, but if this number spikes once again, should it just even shift? How far do you think it will push us back?
It will be a big pushback because I think in some, I think it's Europe or England somewhere there that they have actually gone into a second shutdown. So I mean, what the government is really trying to do is to find a balance between protecting people and opening up so that businesses can continue. And the more you open up is the greater risk you have for increased cases. And with increased cases, it affects two sides. It affects both supply and demand. So you have to think of it that it's impacting your labor force. So when it is that a person goes out and they, get infected with COVID-19, then if it is that they show even mild symptoms, it means that's a sick day or two for that person. Because I mean, if one of the symptoms is dizziness and fever, it's very unlikely that you're going to work during that period of time. And so the more persons in your labor force that have COVID is the greater risk that people are not going to be able to function. So that will impact supply and productivity. And on the other end, if it is that, based on the increased numbers, businesses then would have to probably close at earlier hours because we go back to more restricted state, it means that they're working for less time. So they may go back to, reducing hours for persons, and persons may then start to think, all right, am I going to, probably I never lose my job yet, but with this second phase, I could lose my job and probably start to spend less. And so it impacts both sides because it's really people that you're dealing with, and it's not just random or it's not just numbers out there when you hear that people increase and, there's more cases of COVID is actual human beings, people who cannot function and can't work as they used to. So it impacts on that side as well as people having money to spend. So if it is that we have to go to a lockdown again and so we have to shut down tourism because of lockdown at the airport, it means that those persons who probably came on, got back their job in the industry, probably off again. And as such, they may not, they won't have the funds to be able to purchase and to buy things. So it's a major risk to going forward. So even though there may be, optimism about what could happen in next year based on the fact that things are going great, there is still a great risk because of how contagious the virus is and the risk. So the numbers growing and how it is that you find the balance because you want to open up, but yet still you want to protect people.
It's all about personal responsibility and accountability. Yeah, I really think it is. Pastor Dina asks, can you give us the ordinary viewers ideas to adjust to this new normal?
I think you want to look at, I think I did a course on innovation. So you want to look at how it is that I can take.
You did a course on innovation.
3 days. It wasn't a real course.
Guys, you hear that? So for us who not innovative, there are courses out there that can help to pump those juices. I really wish my pastors were online tonight. I am seeing Nikisha. I know Robert sometimes is listening in the background, not sure if he is, but I really wish, because the congregation is my home studio, so I'm asking you to just ignore the sounds in my background. But I really wish the pastors were here or the leaders were here, because this is where the what we said, the wheel hit the road. How it go?
The rubber hits the road.
The rubber hits the road, because these are some of the conversations you would need to have with your members, because at the end of the day, reality is reality. Yes, we are going to pray. Yes, we are going to fast. Yes, we are going to seek God. I do not take anything out of that. Yes, God operates in the realm of the impossible. I agree with that 100% completely. And so there is another aspect of praying prophetically, foreseeing things before they happen, saving. And I honestly think that Jody has really offloaded a lot to think about. And I think we have come into a certain level of understanding, and I really love the discussions. Again, if you have any comments, if you have anything to say, go ahead, raise your hand. If you don't know how to raise your hand, just unmute your mic and say, hi, Natalie, I have something to say. But Jody, as I cut you, one of your thing was innovation. You did a course on innovation, a 3-day course. My mind is a course there too, because being innovative doesn't just come easy for some persons. Some persons have it. Some persons maybe need to pull on that side of them for them to get it, or to even think outside of the box. Go ahead, Jody.
Yes, I mean, one of the things you learn is that you're actually born innovative, and over time, we restrict people and how they think. So I mean, children are naturally curious, and they don't see things because they haven't formed.
Tell us again, Jody. Everybody born what?
I mean, innovative, like the way you think as a child, and the way you because you haven't been concrete to the fact that things are hard and stone one way, you're open to doing things new way. And what you really want to do is to look at all things and see how it is I can change a feature of it. If it is that I can take away something. So if I look at, like, for example, a cup of coffee, if it is that I can take away a feature or add a feature to help people, then that's innovation. So if it is that I can make the color of it change, to show hot and cold, then that's innovation in itself. And how it is that I can look at a lamp and take away a feature and add something else, make it make sound and create something new. So if it is that you go to supermarkets nowadays, in the beginning of COVID, you had a security guard that was taking the temperature on one side and spraying you on another side. And then they started to have just, they check your temperature and you go one side and you get your own. And
Jody, not to cut you. I went into a store. I don't remember which store. Amir, you did go one lunchtime? Not sure. And when I put my hand, the thing test your temperature plus give you hand sanitizer at the same time. And I looked at the thing, I said, I can better China this come from. I was very shocked. There was nobody there. The supervisor, the security guard sat at the side, and you just place your hand, it takes your temperature, plus dispense the sanitizer. And that was it. Continue.
Yeah, so I mean, that is innovation. That's looking at a problem and solving it. Because what happened is that, we had the security guard doing this, and the security guard stopped doing his other functions. I mean, somebody coming to rob, if somebody robs somebody, security guard cannot give description because he's now focused on, taking temperature and spraying. And, we innovate and we got there. I mean, because the fact that we thought it was temporary, it took a while. And so that's how it is that we have to keep thinking as we enter into a post-COVID world. Things are changing, and how is it that I can solve a problem? So you have to look and say what it is that I had before, why is not working anymore, and what can I add to it to make it work? Just like how you had a phone and they had a camera and they had all of these features. So over time, you just have to prepare your mind to see challenges and think of solutions. So before you start to, don't or reduce the complaining time about how inconveniencing something is, and start to think, how can I fix this? If it is that I am, doing online services, and a lot of, when you think about supermarkets, I mean, online shopping for supermarkets is something that should be happening. I mean, it is just really, you buy the same products all the time at the supermarket. You rarely go there and, probably once every 2 months you buy something different. I mean, it's the same set of things that you're used to. So you have to know, probably look and say how it is that I can solve this long line at the supermarket. If it is, I can create an app for shopping, and then I send that app to several people. So seeing problems and thinking, how can I make a solution? How can I solve it is part of the way we're going to move forward as we change and we adjust to the shifts that are coming.
So Yvonne, I see your hand, and I'm going to ask you to unmute and go ahead and make a comment and ask a question. And Chris, I wanted to preach a 10-minute sermon to everybody on Let's Talk on Facebook. Jody said something, and as Kingdom ambassadors, that's who we are. We create solutions to the problems that's out there. That's just who we are. Yvonne, hi. It's the first time I'm seeing you, so welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you so much. But
Yvonne, you have a feedback. Go again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I came on 2 times before, but baby, that was a big one. So you missed me on that one.
Go again. Sorry, not sure. You're going in and out. Start over.
Okay, I'm saying good evening. As I came on sometimes before, but the audience was much bigger, so maybe you missed me. I haven't been consistent.
Okay, okay.
Jody, supporting Jody. But I'm just thinking the question, the idea that Jody raised when she spoke about statin and the basket of goods and how they would measure consumer index and GDP. That's the really big question. And if it's gonna take us 2 years to reconfigure, I mean, how do we really impact that market in terms of seeing a better Jamaica?
Hmm. That's a excellent question because weave weave and wig and Fazira eyelash is a different. That market I think has reached like $1 trillion market, and I still don't think we measure it. And I think it needs to be a part of our, how the basket is usually bread and them need to throw weave and lip gloss and lipstick in there. Go through, Jody.
Yes, I mean,
No, perhaps we need to check the basket now because the basket was revised. I'm not so sure what's there, but Big is around a long time. So maybe it's in it now. I don't know if Dodi could speak to that, but the basket has been updated.
yeah, so the basket was revised to reflect for 2019. So I think the revision, what we're seeing now is with revision. It takes a while because they have to do some amount of work. You have to look at, because I mean, consumption patterns, take a while to change. It's not really as instantaneous. I mean, because it is that we're looking at it at one point and then it seemed like all of a sudden, this happened. It takes a while to get there. And so it takes a minute for the statisticians to work with information and to get it and to put it in a way that makes real sense. And the other point or the other downfall is that because government is going to have to be spending to support social areas. So for example, when you think of COVID-19, people who are poor or the poor persons below the poverty line are at greater risk, and so they need greater support from government. And government has to be spending more in terms of healthcare and supplying and helping instead of giving out tablets. And those are more immediate needs now, and the government will have to be spending on them within a context where, because tourism is down and because persons are earning less, you're paying less taxes. So if it is that, last year we had 200 people employed and this year we only have 100 people employed, the government is collecting less. So because they're collecting less and they're increasing expenditure in some areas, they're going to prioritize, the immediate needs of people. And as such, statin may not, or the statistical authorities may not get the exact funding that they need to do that sort of build out. And that's part of the reason why it takes a while. So it's really that it takes a while for consumption patterns to become evident in data. And it takes out, governments, based on the situation that we're in now, is really hard pressed to find cash. So they may not be able to support some of the usual methods that they would have to find out this information. So in terms of like a survey or, the census and stuff like that, if it was planned for this year, chances are government will not be supporting that, just on the fact that it is not as great a need as people needing food or people needing cash to support them to continue to live and to enjoy, to have prosperous lives.
Thank you, Jody. Mel, I'm gonna ask you to unmute and talk to us a little bit. So in the chat, Melissa says teachers have become innovative, selling lessons and resources online at teacherspayteachers.com. There's a lot of opportunities available. Mel, can you talk to us a little bit about that? Teacherspayteachers.com.
Yes, I don't know if it's something available in Jamaica, but here, if you create a lesson plan for your
Mel, where is here? Where is here?
Sorry,
Mel?
in New York, in the US, when you create lesson plans for your class, you can post it to this website and other teachers like me will go on and I may look up, a subject area. And if a teacher created a whole unit, and a lot more have been created, more online friendly units, then I can pay up to, $10, $20 for a unit. And if it's going to save me 10 hours of planning, I'm okay with spending that $20 for another teacher to make that money. If she took the time to spend that amount of hours creating 20 different units for the course of a month, then I'm definitely willing to pay for that. So that is one of the websites that a lot of teachers use here in order to make money on the side while doing their work presently.
All right, so I don't know if anybody
you have some savvy teachers out there.
So I don't know if nobody there on the platform right now. If that can't work for you, create a platform that Jamaicans can use, and that sound nice. That sound Shelly, Kelly.
Yeah, man, me a ear.
All right. We're generating income streams on this platform. We are. Whoa. Things are out there, opportunities are out there, guys, and we taking advantage of them. Pastor Dina is him jump off of Facebook and jump onto Zoom. All right, Jody, I know you were starting to answer the questions and we diverted, but back again, ideas to adjust to the new norm. So innovation was one, and we just heard about the teachers, how they've become innovative over in New York. Idea that can be replicated here in Jamaica. What are you saying?
I mean, I think if idea, I mean, a lot of businesses start because I had a problem and I solve it and I figure, as the Bible would have said, there's nothing, that come to you that is new. So, chances are if I have a problem, somebody else out there have a problem. When you look at a lot of stores that do specialize, baby products, or they specialize in things, because a consumer found difficulty in finding a particular product and they figure a lot of people must have this difficulty, and then they did something about it. And I think that pretty much that's what one teacher did. I mean, they struggled to, create lesson plans in a new era, and they say, well, why somebody couldn't have do this and I buy it, and they figure I can sell this. And that's the same thing. If it is that you find yourself, in a space and you have an idea, are you doing something? There's somebody else out there who's struggling, who can do what you do, and you could sell them that product. And so you want to always be thinking, I think the key is really how it is that you can solve problems. And that will get you there, because there are going to be problems that arise in these new industries that come about. As I mentioned, with everybody moving online, you're going to have cybersecurity issues, but you're also going to become other issues that just outside. There are new sectors, there are new nuances that come in with these eras, and how it is that we can solve those problems, how it is that we can deal with that. I mean, there's always going to be issues. I mean, if you think about it, before there was, this much crime, people never used to have as much burglar bars and security system. But when that problem came about, it meant money for some people. And it's really how it is that I can stay where I am, see things that are happening and make ways to solve that problem, or to see what is going to be a challenge coming in now with something new with COVID. So you want to even look ahead. So if it is, I know that I work in a bank and I realize that persons are going to be, probably moving to have the loans done online because people don't want to come in. And I used to get most of my sales from, meeting people at the door. I now have to find a new way to do that. And if it is that I can find a new way to do that, I can then sell that idea to other banks to say, hey, this is how I did it. So, I have developed an online thing, I've developed this, and you can share that idea and you can earn income from it. Or you may find that you have start a platform and you get so many people that you can process all of their loans, and so you can start to, hand off people and they give you a part of their commission, because not everybody is able to do what you do. You have to think that, your skill and what you have is valuable. And if it is that I can, in this new space, use my skills and do something, I can also sell that skill to other people who are not able to do it. So you want to look at yourself as a viable entity that can make things happen, and how it is that I can sell my use and services. And you notice a lot of people have been using online platforms. So if it is that you're in entertainment and you couldn't at one point, if it is that, for example, you MC concerts and that was, a little side gig, but concert not keep at church no more. You have to then think, can I have an online concert online? So people still know you bring vibes and energy, And because it's you, they will tune in and you create a online concerts, and people pay and they watch, and you still expand and you grow, because you could get greater audiences from an online platform as opposed to how many people you can host in your local church. So I mean, I may become active on Instagram and you follow me, and chances are if I were having a concert in Portmore and you live in Ochi, you wouldn't drive up for it. But now that I'm online, I'm reaching greater people. So you still want to think of the skills that you have before and how it is that I can use them or transfer them to new platforms that persons are now opening up to.
Woo! Only for something you said. Only for something said. Holy for stuff spoken about. I'm giving you guys, before I ask another question, do you have anything else to say? Do you want to comment? Even if it seems weird, I know that the economy is something we tend to just listen to, unless there's crime or some big uproar. We don't have an understanding of how the different activities affect the economy. Crime affects the economy, COVID affecting the economy. Christmas is now around the corner.
But not,
Sure.
it's even coming from last week. Officially, hi Jody. Even coming from last week, where we learned about wealth and the power and the influence. 5 pillars of influence from Jamar presentation, and how wealth, the importance of wealth to fund and to push our agenda, basically. So it's a very important sector. It's something that as Christians, you remember we talked last week that as Christians we get saved and we lose our mind. Yeah, we give up our mind. So all of these terminologies is something that we need to have discussions on, and it's not just a if you have a discussion that is traditionally to be like a worldly discussion, it's something that let's get back to the godly stuff. Mm-hmm. But we are the pillars in the economy. We are the influencers, and we should help. As we talk about dominion, it's about sustaining people, and we have a role to ensure that the economy doesn't crash because people are going to die for hunger, or people are going to lose their jobs. And if people lose their jobs, people are going to steal and a lot of criminal activities. So we have a role to play in that. So it's not just getting in the economy as Christians just to make money and to have wealth and all of that. We sustain people. We ensure that people don't die for hunger, and people have a livelihood going. And the truth is, whether they are saved or unsaved, we're not just going in the economy to sustain it so that Christians can live. We cater for everybody because we don't know the timeline when people are going to be saved. That's up to God. Our job is to ensure that we become a light in this area. And so we have to balance the transition as Christians. How do we play our role? What role do we play in the economy, in rebuilding the economy? Is this a good opportunity for us as Christians now that the sector is dying down, for us to get some divine revelation and bridge that gap? We're too spiritual, and our spirituality really is not translating into natural things, and that's where we have to bridge that gap.
And that's why I was saying that, it would be good for leaders to be on this platform, because these are the conversations that we can have as groups. Jody spoke about innovation. That thing is very key. It is critical. How do you sustain something? That's a conversation, once again, we can have in our groups, because at the end of the day, I work in the financial sector. We have persons in IT sector. We have persons in government who works, we call them civil servants online. So we have different sectors here represented right now on this platform and on Facebook Live. It is for us to get into that circle, to start to have this discussion, because at the end of the day, we won't know what we can do and what role we can play to sustain. I honestly consider a HR manager a gatekeeper. Anyone in HR is considered a gatekeeper because they let in. I think Renee will correct me if I say they let out too as well. But at the end of the day, I know some decisions really stand with whosoever is responsible for the business line or the department, but it still causes us to think. It's not a thinking habit that we usually have. And you can correct me, Jody. This is not something that we would normally think about. It's almost like, let's pray about it and leave it to Jesus. Like, you know, we don't really have a role. But what I'm saying on Let's Talk is that, guys, you need to start thinking. You know, you need to start understanding that you may have to be a little bit kinder this Christmas season if you have a certain level of income, because somebody else may need it for their help, to help them then sustain. I've learned through, I think one year my Pastor Valerie came and she was speaking about how persons react during the season, just their psychological space during Christmas. They're extremely sad because they either don't have any family, don't have any friends, they have no one around them. And here we are still being restricted. So one, we have restriction on top of the fact that Christmas is not the happiest season for some persons because of all that they go through. Christmas is a very bittersweet season for me, as my husband will know. I lost my dad on Christmas Day, but I have support. I have persons around me to help support me and keep me up. There are persons who are not there. So yes, we have to become our brother's keeper, as well as we have to become people keepers, just people on a whole, full stop, just being keepers of mankind. And I really want you to start to think, and if you can start this conversation in your space, it's not restricted to Let's Talk. I'm not going to feel away if you guys have a platform and say, Natalie, give me Jody number. No problem. It's not restricted to Let's Talk. It's not restricted to Facebook. Let's Talk on Facebook. We need to have these discussions. I think about just the demographics of Church of God of Prophecy, and it's a lot of farmers, domestic workers, and I'm thinking about the demographic of just St. Catherine East. And this is a conversation that should be had, because then you would say, okay, if this is what you used to do, maybe this is what you're going to need to do now, because tourism is opening back up. So if you can maybe start still a 1-2 chicken, or you understand, these are some of the conversations we need to have. Before I go over back to Jody, I just want to say, anyone else wants to jump in? Anyone else have any comments? Any statements, any questions for Jody?
I was just gonna add, Natalie, hi everybody. I've been kind of listening in and out. Janelle here. I think it might have been said a little bit earlier. I think Jody might have raised it. I think I mentioned it at the last presentation. You know, we definitely have some challenging times ahead. In terms of, even specifically, I know we've been exaggerating about the tourism sector, but normally, like for example, on a month, there would be about 250,000 stopover arrivals that we would have. And last month we only had 45,000. You understand what I'm saying? That's like 20% or 25%. And the challenge now is that even though the hotels some are open and operating, for them to even break even, they need like a 60% occupancy, right? And right now their occupancy is 10 and 20%. So there's still a lot of bleeding going on, and it has implications for the financial sector, who, you know, is responsible for some of the assets and that kind of thing. We have the ground transportation providers who, you know, that's about 95% of them that just have not worked. They just don't have any work, because even, we have to also remember that even though the sector did open up, or the borders opened, for the first couple of months, visitors were not allowed to leave their hotel. They weren't allowed to go to attractions and shopping malls. So there's nowhere for the transportation people to even take them. So there's also the craft vendors, you know, so we definitely And then also too is the skepticism of the actual visitor to go. You understand what I'm saying? So the visitor might actually just want to stay in the hotel and not go anywhere else because of the, the risk and that kind of thing. It is not likely that the sector is going to recover to what it was in 2019 until they're saying 2024, 2025. Now that is 5 years time.
Hold on. Janelle, why come out here come traumatize me? What you just said?
No, I'm being serious. I mean, there are projections but for now and estimations, but I mean, remember there are a lot of things that people only can travel when there's a certain amount of disposable income. So unless our other source markets are financially able to, because most of our people travel for leisure, they don't come out here because they necessarily need a medicinal treatment or some big surgery. Most people travel for leisure and there's a certain amount of disposable income that is required. So the United States represents 70% of our arrival market. So once things are volatile up there, we have to remember, guys, that, and then people are also skeptical about doing the long haul flights from Europe and UK, because you don't want to be on a plane for 10 hours, air circulation, all of that kind of thing. So without getting into too much detail, I think, we genuinely have to realize that this is going to require a lot of effort from the government. And as I think Jody mentioned it before, the government's coffers now, them dry. You understand? Government pocket dry right now because the level of just even taxation that they would get from the tourism sector alone through airport charges, theft collections, cruise taxes, GCT. I mean, I'm sure, Natalie, you said you would have probably wanted me to come another time, but I could kind of give you guys some figures at that time. It's going to be daunting for what the government would have received in their coffers from these sectors and are just not going to receive it. We also have to remember that cruise, we still haven't gotten any cruise ships, guys, and cruise right now, the cruise ships are almost incubators for COVID. Like the cruise ships say, COVID, come here, take place in here, you understand? And there is, cruise is not likely to we're not even likely to see our first ship until next year summer, you understand? And the cruise passengers, they actually go into the economy and spend money. It's them go to the attractions, it's them take the transportation, it's them go to the craft markets. So we definitely have some challenges ahead. I don't know if the government is going to now extend the stimulus packages with a little bit of money we them have. I don't know, but we definitely have to be very, very grateful in this time as well that we are able to gather here on a Sunday. I'm sure we're belly full from a Christmas dinner. From a Sunday dinner. It's very daunting for the sector, very, very daunting. So I kind of want everybody to just remember. Also, Jody mentioned the linkages and the agriculture man and the manufacturing man. I even hear now that there are a lot of wedding planners that used to get a lot of business from the US to do weddings out here, and they have been severely hit. And it's not until these things have happened to tourism that you realize how deep the linkages actually are. So yeah, just kind of bear that in mind, guys. Definitely sometimes that we have to brace for. We really have to brace for it.
Well, that's, as Jenna mentioned, about 70%, that was the number, right, of our tourists are from US?
68% from the US and about another 15 from Canada. So US, well, North America is about 80%.
And there was some travel advisory came out recently. And this is from US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And they have Jamaica on level 4, risk for COVID, and level 4.
Which is crazy, Chris, because nobody is as bad for COVID as the United States of America. And it's almost offensive because you're like, telling people not to come here. And as you might have seen in the paper, that has impacted the December bookings that we're looking up. Understand? So it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, just for the family to know. Level 1 is exercise normal precautions, and this is travel advisory to tourists. Level 1, exercise normal precautions. Level 2, exercise increased precaution. Level 3, reconsider travel. And level 4, do not travel. Wow.
Janelle, thank you so much.
Exactly, Chris. So us going from a reconsider travel to nobody got Jamaica is like, man, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Some people are not as sensitive to those things, but most people are, especially with this COVID thing. People are definitely not adhering, but they're definitely knowledgeable about what the CDC and the health organizations have had to say. So yeah, thanks for that, Chris.
Yeah, and two, because of the whole reggae culture attract a lot of tourists and stuff. So even a lot of stuff. When you even think of the funeral and the fact that you can't even have a burial now of a lot of people, there are a lot of persons who use just to sell items, sweet and drinks, liquor and all of that. Just park up at a funeral. I've known this guy who he doesn't care. He just wants to know where the funeral is, and that's how he makes money. And so because now you can't have this because of COVID, now he can't able to do that. So it has a lot of repercussions throughout the economy.
Wow. I'm happy, John, that you came on, and I'm happy that you spoke, because really and truly, our prayer meetings them need for change up. Because we have some real issues to pray about. Real issues to pray about. I didn't know those projections. I honestly was looking at 2022, not 2024, not 2025. Jody, you see, guys, let me tell you why I'm nervously smiling. Janelle said something that jump off of the line real quick. Majority of these hotels, they take out loans sometimes to do their expansion. Some of these attraction places, as she said, financial houses owns those assets, some financial houses. So if you don't have revenue coming in, you can't pay your loans. So Jody, you are the research analyst here. Talk to me.
Before Jody goes nuts, I also just wanted to remind everybody on that point. Remember that as much as Adam Stewart is and Butch Stewart is, they do not finance the hotel. They don't. They allow the banks who are in the business of financing. So even the richest hotelier, if you get what I'm saying, there are still implications there. Butch don't use his own money around sandals. You understand? So I just wanted to drop that in. So it's not just a small man that is having challenges. It is actually probably more the bigger man, because remember, even with a hotel being 20% at occupancy, there's still the elevator, there's still the air condition, those major infrastructure things that still need to run. It's not just a small man, even in the sector. So sorry, Jody, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's still daunting. I mean, and there is continued risk. I mean, even though the projections are for 4 or 5 years for recovery, there's still a risk to that. I mean, it could be worse because we're still learning about COVID. So, I mean, we could learn further new information about it. And, persons who probably were infected probably now have, some issues later on that could then cause a greater issue. So there's still a risk even to that 4 to 5. But I guess to push on now, the bad news is that we are in a better place. The country, we're in a better place than we were when it is that we had the crisis, the global financial crisis in 08, 09. So it took us 10 years to recover from that. So it took us 10 years before we got back to the level we were before we had that impact. And I think PIOJ is projecting that it may take 4 to 5 years. And the thing is that we'd have worked as a country, we'd have made quite a bit of sacrifice to work on ourselves so that we're in a position now that we are not as bad when that happened. So even though we still have issues, so it don't mean that because we're better, things not going to bother us, or we're not going to feel it. We're still going to feel it, but the impact that it's going to have is not going to be as bad, and we'll be able to recover a little bit better. So even though it is bad, it could have been worse had we not make those changes to our economy that we did, after the crisis, and what they call entrenching, structural changes. So I think I can try and put it in our way as an everyday relationship and not so much an economy. I think a lot of persons probably buy their first car when they weren't ready. So, I mean, if you think of a young man probably buying his first car, 23, 24, and there are certain things you never prepared for. So, you know that you'd have to pay your insurance, your fitness, and all of that. But, you never plan that, you'd be driving on the tire burst the same time, the same one that insurance due. And so you find that when you get this new car, you struggle. I mean, you have a lot of issues and, you had to cut back, you had to, change how you do things. I mean, even though you buy the car to go places, you realize that having the loan and all that can't go anywhere. And you would have to make sacrifices and, you work on your way and you start probably investing in the stock market, you start the little things and, you improve on yourself, you probably get an increase. And you find yourself, 5 years down the line and, you probably have kids and you realize that, the one car for the family with the kid not going to work. And so I need another car. And when that new car comes and you go to buy that one, even though it is more money in terms of service that loan, you realize that you're better able to manage it. And you're better able to manage it because of the things or the sacrifices you made when you had that first car. So it's the same thing, the economy, that we did with the economy. We had this crisis that hit and it hit us bad, but we made some changes. You had the debt exchange and, government reduced debt and they did all of these things and they reevaluate and they push certain things. So when it is that this big shock now come, you still have issues. It still take a little while to deal and to cope with it, but it's not as bad had it been you never do those changes. So things, even though they are bad, they could be worse. And we still want to give thanks for that. We want to give thanks that we made changes. So the banking system is going to be impacted. They're already being impacted. When you look at it, the fact that it's not just from big companies, you have to think of a lot of small companies or a lot of small people who can no longer service the loan. So if I took out a car and I lose my job, I mean, I'm not going to, even though pride might kick in, I'm going to say, I'm going to buy food and, if they want to come take back the car, then take it back. But that's going to be bad for the company. That's going to be bad for the bank. And when you think of several people doing that, that impact is big. And they have to be reassessing and doing a lot of things within the financial industry to cushion this impact. However, had there not been, financial crisis before where they had improved the reserves and improved how it is that they monitor things, then it would have been much worse had they not having gone through that. So even though things are bad and we need to pray, we need to work with, as Natalie said, you need to give to others. If it is that you are still in a job, you need to remember that there are persons who are not within a job. And, we normally do giving, in Christmas, you probably feed homeless and stuff. You may have to think that it may not just be the homeless. It could be a very neighbor who is still in a house that is not having a meal, that is traditional Christmas meal. I mean, it could be just, doing a little flash out or something on Christmas Day. And you could have to consider that you have to spread to that area as well and not just think of people who you see and, that seem to be, at the worst end. It could be anybody around you that is now challenged and, having issues. People would have invested in the stock market on the hope that they would have made money and they probably made losses. And they're also struggling. There are people who are going through, depressed times. And when you think of the fact, I think of my own family, we generally go back to the country and visit other cousins and whatever. That's not going to happen. And if it is that I would go and, they'd probably see probably older aunts and stuff, it's community and building for them. They're not going to have that this year because, I'm not going in COVID and, they're elderly. They don't want me to come either. And so people are, the social need that we have as humans is getting impacted, as well as our physical needs just for sustenance and food. And, even outside our children getting presents, just the need to know that I have a meal. It's going to be tough times, but, we're going to learn how to change. Things are going to happen that's a little bit different than we used to. And we're going to walk through. I mean, we have been through challenges before. And we need to learn and continue to use that as motivation that we can get through what is to come. But it's going to be a little bit of a road. So even as you go through Christmas and you may still have a job, you may still get a little bonus, I encourage you to still save and to not go fully wild and, spend everything now, because next year it's still uncertain waters. There are certain things that we're still not sure what's going to happen. It could get worse or before it even starts to get to recovery.
Okay, thank you so much, Jody. Anyone wants to ask any questions, make any comments? Now is the time. We're getting close to that hour where we have to wrap up. Janelle and Joy has just been feeding us information, and I honestly believe we need this information. Honestly think that it's time for us to be equipped with the right knowledge to know how to proceed forward. Mental health is a real thing. I believe in mental health days. We no longer call them sick days or vacation days. We call them mental health days because you ain't sick and you ain't on vacation. So mental health days are days that are really, really necessary. Jody, no one has asked, but I just want to know, in general, you can also chime in. How do you see remittance? Because enough people look forward to Western Union. For all of my foreigners, my New Yorkers, my Atlantans, on the Facebook, on Facebook and on Zoom. Yes, and my, what you call them, the Floridians. Yes, and my Canadians that join. What do you, where are we looking? How are we looking when it comes on to remittances?
The remittances is actually one of the positives coming out of COVID. So, I think we're doing better than we thought. We're actually higher in terms of what it is that we're seeing coming in via remittance. So there are several thoughts or processes to it. If it is, there's one consideration that persons who would normally travel and then leave money with friends and family are not able to travel, and as such, they are now sending these funds via official means. So normally, if it is that I come to Jamaica and I walk with $1,000 and I give, grandma, uncle, whatever, that doesn't really count because it doesn't really come through one of the more formal challenges of remittances, so it doesn't really count. But if it is that I can't travel this summer, so instead, I still have money, I still know that my relatives are in need, I'm still sending, and so that could be part of the reason why we're seeing more. But remittances have actually improved. We thought that they would have, severely dipped as to what happened when we had the crisis in 08, 09. We saw a big dip in remittances because, as Janelle pointed out, if things are shaky in the source markets, then, there's less coming to us. So if it is that persons are losing their jobs abroad, then they have less to send. And so we're expecting that with the impact of COVID in the markets that we normally get remittance from, that we'd see a decline, but we have actually seen an increase. And so that is one of the positives that is really coming out of COVID. And it also links to persons seeing that the need for Jamaicans, and a lot of people would have donated, particularly for education, tablets and stuff like that. And so that would have been buffer for remittances. However, some persons are going to experience some amount of a decline in the flows towards them just because they're in source markets. And with lockdown open up too quickly, with lockdowns, people probably earning less, they're probably losing jobs. So it could still have an impact. So, even though we're seeing improvements now, you still have to be cautious going forward because that may not necessarily be sustained going forward. It could just mean that persons are using new means or methods of sending funds back to Jamaica, as well as there is some amount of funds now that is available that may not still be available to send in another year or two, because there's still a lot of risk because of the uncertainty surrounding COVID.
Okay. All right. So remittances, okay. So all of my big foreign, little foreign people, Western Union still work, MoneyGram still work. Uno can send money for the sister-in-law. Uno, uno auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa. Yes. And another thing that I wanted to say is substitutes. You spoke a lot about innovation. You spoke a lot about the other upcoming sectors that will be created, or new sectors that we will kind of see and hear more from. How do you see substitutes, and explain to both Facebook and Zoom what are substitutes? So those terms are layman terms for them. Go ahead.
All right, so substitute is switching out one thing for another. So I mean, supply chains have been impacted because of COVID. So for example, I know Indies Pharma, which is a pharmaceutical company, pointed out that they were expecting to get some amount of shipments, for products coming from, I think it was India or somewhere, and they weren't able to get those because COVID has caused, disruptions in how it is that things now move from spaces. And so when you have something like that happening, if it is that I would normally use a particular product and I can't get it, I would have to think of something else that I can use in place of that. And that's what you'd call a substitute. And so there is going to be market for using substitute products, just on the nature that supply chains are going to be impacted. If it is that I think there was a case where some persons went, I think we shipped, tissue, we exported tissue in the earlier this year to the US market, just because there was that great demand and persons weren't able to get as much as they needed. So that is one case in which there was supply disruption and we're able to fill a particular market. But there could be opportunities for substitutes, as it is that way we face a situation where we may not be able to get all of what we need. And if it is there is greater demand for a particular product in a particular area, persons are going to be less likely to export a product if it is that their own country is in need of it. So if it is that within my country, we're using, say, castor oil for whatever purpose, and we find that, the demand for castor oil has increased within locally, or it's now a benefit for, say, COVID or to treat something, I'm not going to export that. So another country now have to say, all right, I used to get castor oil from this country. What could be used in place of castor oil? And they would then have to say, even though there's castor oil, there's coconut oil that have similar benefits, or it could be used for the same thing and you substitute one for the other. So there are going to be opportunities where that can happen, just because supply chains will be impacted and demand for products and services may increase and you may not be able to source it from your usual place.
And if you want coconut oil, you can link natural oils in the chat. You can privately contact her. She has coconut oil, raw coconut oil, I believe, for sale. Jody, there are some sectors though. Go ahead, sorry there.
Just one thing, Jody, what do you think about partnering with persons who may be struggling now? Business may be going down, and would it be an opportunity for somebody who may have the cash? Yes, there's, of course, you have to consider the risk, whether it will plummet or not. But sometimes is it that some people may just need a partner to come in and to sustain the business through this period. And then I guess there's the benefit of, because you are now a partner, you can benefit from the profit later on down when things turn. What do you think about that concept?
Yeah, so in finance, and Natalie was term it as private equity, or you could be like, financing what you call alternative investment sort of thing, where you could now finance somebody who is high risk. So
An angel financer?
Right. So if it is that you're part, so for example, somebody in tourism, and they used to do probably tour operations, and they serviced quite a bit of foreigners coming in, and things have changed, and because they weren't getting any income for 6 months, they have liquidity needs, so they don't have money. I mean, people come in now, but they would have spent all of the cash that they had, just to keep the business, sustainable, or just to keep the business fresh during that 6 months. And so now they have problems with cash flow, and tourists coming in and they want to start up back. That's an opportunity if you have capital to say, hey, I can lend you. You could do one, I could lend it to you and you pay me back when things pick up. And, because it's high risk and they can't go to the bank, they'll be open to borrowing from you. As well as you could say, all right, then give me a stake in the business. So I give you some money and I become part ownership. And so I share in the profits. So there are two ways you could do it. And the truth is that you're going to have people who are more what you call now loan sharks, who will come in and take advantage of situations like this. Because if I can't get a loan from the bank and I need a loan, then it means that I'm going to go to somebody who could then charge me more than the bank would charge me. So if the bank would then say 6%, you know, under typical circumstances, the bank not lending me and I go to Natalie and say, well, you know, you're Aris, so I'm going to add some basis points to it, and she probably charge you 8%. And you have people who will come in and take advantage. And if it is that as a church and a kingdom community, we can help people and, you know, not have them go into situations that their livelihood becomes threatened, because the higher the interest rate is, the more money you're paying out, and the more money you're paying out is the less you have to make the business work. And if it is that we can, you know, create a fund and, you know, become advisors and part owners, then that's a great opportunity for us to help and to service within the kingdom.
Any more questions, Grace? And I know Robert is hearing. I tell you, I wish we had more leaders online. You know, ways in which we can help and grow. But Jody, there are some sectors that have not been impacted one iota, like construction. Like a particular company by the name of Carib Cement. But don't understand, oh, who is building, what them building? But don't get it. I don't understand it. There are some sectors that just have not felt the impact of COVID any at all. Speak to me a little bit about those sectors, and if you foresee, same way how we have a recovery for 4 to 5 years, do you see those sectors being impacted any at all?
I think they will. I think there is some down. There's some sectors of construction that are down. I mean, I know NHTs, you know, they're not doing as much as they started out or how much they did last year, but there it's still interesting because persons are going to still build out. If it is that I am in a pandemic, I want to prepare for the future, what is to come. So if it is that I have capital, I want to prepare myself so I become a first mover when things happen. So if it is that now during the downtime, I can still make an expansion to our business because I know that I'm in an area that is going to become needed eventually or within, you know, that before that recovery period, I want to be able so that I can be a first mover. And there is still demand for housing. I mean, when you look at the numbers, I think they said the housing stock, you know, what is required or what people are saying that they would need for have full everybody that's based on population having space or having a home is like 10,000. And we're not making that much here. So there's still a deficit. And because there's still a deficit, there's still going to be some amount of construction. And there are quite a bit of people who use homes particularly as investments. So remember that one of the things that happens with property is that there's revaluation each year and property value tends to go up. So even if I may not be making a tangible income coming in from having a property, I am still making what they call unrealized gains or non-cash gains because the value of this thing is going up. So it means that if I can do it now in COVID, and then 5 years later when, you know, everything recover and the boom is there and people want to now live back in Kingston, I already have this property from 2020, 2021, and I can sell it, you know, when the market prices go all the way back up. So people are still looking for opportunities to make investments and to gain from the recovery that is to come. And that is part of what you're seeing. And as well as people are the shifting when you think of you working from home, there are people who are probably doing a little bit of home improvement just to make home a little bit more comfortable and a greater space. So before, when it is that I used to be out, you know, I leave well early because of traffic and I come back well late because of traffic or working late, I would really just be sleeping at home and going out. But now I'm here every day and I realize that, you know, oh my gosh, there is this and I need to do this. And, you know, you have children and they all need their own little space. If it is that I can build out, if it is that I'm still looking to expand because there's no a different need that I had than I had before being in this new space with COVID. So it's quite a bit that impacts the construction sector. And then there is going to be continuing because there is infrastructure damage because of the heavy rains. So you will see going forward into next year that there's still going to be some spending to fix roads and that sort of thing going forward into 2020, 2021, thereabouts, just because of the damage that's happened and that sort of spend. but home construction may dip, and there may also be a pickup in other areas outside of, the main towns, because if I can productively work from home, whether I'm in Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, or Kingston, my boss just wants to know that the work is still happening. So if it is that I have a house in Kingston, I could probably rent it. And, I've always wanted to live at Richmond. It was so nice, but it was just so far from work. I can probably look to say, let me live there. And so there is going to be demand even outside of Kingston for homes, just because there is now a shift with work from home, and work from home means work from anywhere, really.
Okay, Doreen, I see your hand up. You can go ahead and ask your question or please make your comment.
Yes, Natalie, when I was younger, nobody could tell me that a concrete house would leak. So now with the rain coming, it's like new, everybody is complaining about the concrete roof is leaking. So you have to make changes.
So, Chris, concrete is leaking. So,
that has nothing to do with the material.
Structural design.
Yes.
Boy, Jody, you really gave us a lot to think about, a lot of information. John, thank you so much for coming on. As I said, for those who are here, if you are a leader in any capacity, you have some stuff to really pray about, some stuff to even inquire of the Lord about. I'm going to go link my friend and say, hey, Jody, we need a 3-day course there, because as she spoke about innovation, that we need to become innovative in this new time, that you are born with it, but then it was stifled. That can happen to many persons because, again, we restrict everybody to only in doctor, lawyer, Indian, chief. And so the creative aspect of persons are stifled. I see where Terry Carell is doing her vlogs, and she is sometimes side by side with the Jada Pinkett Red Table Talk on the platform that she streams on. So there are different ways of becoming industrious during this time and creating different income streams. 'Tis the season. I was told not to bake the whole heap of cake, so I have successfully, right, hubby, brought it down. But I'm still in the mode that, be that voice to someone in this season. Call someone, even though it's even if it's outside of your comfort. Call someone, talk to someone. If you are not afraid to venture out, go out, but do it responsibly. Mental health, I really believe, is critical, especially for the children as well. Get them involved in coming out of the house and doing something, smelling fresh air, seeing somewhere. It's a new, and there are things that we need to do. Jody spoke about saving, not being irrational with your spending because you are not sure what will happen. Be rational though with how you go about doing what you're doing, because we have seen the track record that each time there is a holiday, there is some serious significant spikes, and these spikes have implications. Also, start doing your own reading, your own research. Look at the space that you are in, study and understand that space. Have conversations with others, see what ideas that you can come up with. It doesn't have to necessarily be grand ideas. It can be small ideas, but when you get those ideas, don't second guess yourself. Run with it, because people are running with their ideas. John, I want you to come on and talk a little bit about crime. And we know that crime is going to get a little bit worse this Christmas, because we know that with Christmas and the fact that persons don't have it, they're going to be figuring out ways to have it. John, you want to speak about it a little before I close off?
I was just kind of saying that, just kind of as a caution, that we have to remember there are not just less people working, but the less people who are working, they also there's an impact on household spending. So if I'm from a household and you have two breadwinners and they're not making any money, I'm hungry. So I might not be a thief, but I might take an opportunity and snatch a phone during the Christmas season while the shopping is going on. So I think we have to be mindful of that there are people who, even if not criminals per se, there are people who, you understand, they're hungry, them depressed, them devastated, and some people might just take an opportunity this year more than they normally do in the Christmas season when there is a rampant, phone snatching and stuff like that. So I was just kind of imploring everybody to just kind of be careful, just be very, very mindful when you're out there, as much as the innovators and the entrepreneurs are going into other markets, so are the criminals, you understand? They are also being innovative to see how, what opportunities this can bring for them. But just kind of imploring everybody, when you do your shopping and thing and whatever you have to do on the road, just be very, very mindful. Lock doors. Woman with no holy handbag on the bag, try not to carry all of the bag of things.
Talk about the woman with the holy puff handbag. I know a few.
Yeah, so just kind of be on the lookout, guys. I just try to make up.
So guys, these are some of the stuff that we started off with at the beginning of the year. And I just wanted to close, out the year a little bit with some of these stuff. And I'm grateful for John and I'm grateful for Jody. And I'm going to start the beginning of the year again with the economy, because I believe that we need to know. I believe that we need to know how to pray. I believe that there's some stuff that we can tap into and expound on. So guys, thank you so much. Jody, I'm going to give you your last remarks if you have anything to say before we close.
Just not to be daunted. Don't think the worst, keep thinking positive, keep remembering who it is that you have trusted before, who brought you through trials before, and that God is still here, he's still able, he's still amazing, he's still awesome. And we need to put more into the work that we do, because we are needed as part of the kingdom to effect change, and we need to start with us. And don't worry too much about understanding the numbers and the figures and the terms, but understand that it is something that you're a part of. It's real, it's happening, and that you have a part to play in effecting the change as we go forward. And thanks again for having me.
Jody, before you go, there's one stock market that's doing well, the US.
Mm-hmm.
How do we as Jamaicans benefit from that? We can benefit.
You can invest in the US stock market. I know a lot of their brokers offer opportunities to not, even if you say stocks that look expensive, you can buy a piece of stock. Or Apple is pricey, and it's doing well. You may not be able to buy a full one stock of Apple, but you can buy a piece of Apple and it's appreciated.
Amazon.
Right. So there are opportunities, particularly because that market was already poised and doing a lot of online, so they were already there. So when COVID came, it's just to boost and to build out. And so you see benefits there, particularly in the tech sector and the tech era, that you can benefit from. So you just need to find a broker. There are some that are online, and they offer quite a bit of options that you can do when it is that you go online that we don't necessarily offer here, in terms of how it is that you can do trading. But there are definitely opportunities in the pharmaceutical sector, particularly when you have a vaccine. And even though there is uptick in that price already for those stocks, the fact is that the demand for vaccine is going to be global. It's not just one area that's going to demand it. So You know, even though a lot of that is priced in, there's still gains that can be made from that area. And there are definitely opportunities on the US. They're much more responsive to economic data in their market, and they growth for July to September, partially because they compared to the previous quarter, whereas we compared to the year before, but they are recorded growth for July to September, and they are opening and seeing uptick, and you can definitely benefit from those.
Thank you so much. Chris, do you have anything to say as Jody just gave us a mouthful again?
No, thank you. Great presentation and great information, both you and Janelle. Thanks, guys.
Yes, so I'm seeing her on Facebook. Very interesting and informative. Very interesting. Yeah, seeing a lot of very interesting and informative. So thank you, Facebook, for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you so much again, my Zoom family. Let's talk. Thank you. We started strong and we're ending strong, irrespective of the storms, as Jody says. You know, we're going to overcome. We've been given the information and we serve a God that is an overcomer. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the platform. You know how we start is the same way we end. And thank you for spending your night with me. You could have been anywhere else, doing something else, but you chose to be here tonight. And thank you.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky and the Brain.
Thank you so much, guys. We soon stop say try take over the world and just say we are run with it. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much, Jody. I appreciate you coming on the platform and just giving us a mouthful, a handful. There's just so much to think about. We need to put everything into perspective. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Good night. Enjoy your night. Bye-bye.